All right, today we're diving into one of the all-time great adventure stories, Rudyard Kipling's The Man Who Would Be King. This is a story about two guys in 19th century India, a couple of British soldiers who are completely down on their luck, who decide, you know what, we're done being small time. Their plan is, well, it's insane. They're going to march into a totally forgotten corner of the world and build their own empire from scratch.
And this quote, this is the exact moment their whole crazy adventure kicks off. We're introduced to Peachy Carnahan and Daniel Dravat. They're con men, they're vagabonds, they're ex-soldiers, and they honestly believe the British Empire just isn't big enough for them. And this isn't just talk. For them, it's a dead serious promise to chase a dream so huge it's borderline madness.
Now, you might think this was just some wild idea they came up with over a drink, right? Nope. They were absolutely serious. So serious, in fact, that they drew up an official document to formalize their ambition. They called it the contract. And this thing, it wasn't just a plan. It was a secret vow. Just two men against the whole world.
So, what was in this contract? Well, the rules they set for themselves were brutally, beautifully simple. First, the mission, become kings. Second, the discipline needed to get there. No liquor, no women. They knew those were the two things that could bring the whole thing crashing down. And third, the most important rule of all, loyalty. No matter what happens, you stand by your partner. This little piece of paper was going to be the foundation of their entire kingdom.
So, if you're going to be a king, where do you even go? Well, you go to a place that barely even exists on the map. They picked Kafiristan, this incredibly remote part of Afghanistan that was so isolated, it was literally a blank spot on the British charts. It was a land of constant tribal warfare, totally untouched by the empire. And their logic was pretty simple and pretty ruthless. In a land of total chaos, two guys who know military tactics and have modern weapons, well, they could eventually become kings, or even gods.
Okay, so the pact is signed, the destination is picked, now comes the really hard part. Actually getting there. They have to cross one of the most dangerous places on the planet, and the way they planned to do it was just pure crafty genius. They knew they couldn't just stroll in as two Englishmen. They'd be killed almost instantly. So Dravat comes up with his brilliant disguise. He'll be a mad priest, a holy lunatic, with Peachy acting as his quiet, humble servant. It was the perfect cover, really, because in that part of the world, people believed that the mad were protected by God. Nobody would mess with them. But hidden underneath all the cheap toys they were pretending to sell was their real treasure. And this was it. This was their real investment. 20 modern breech-loading martini rifles. Now you gotta understand, these weren't just guns. To the local tribes using old matchlocks, these rifles were like something from the future. They had incredible range, incredible accuracy. Peachy and Dravat poured every last penny they had into these weapons. It was a massive gamble, because if they got caught, they'd be executed as gun runners. But this was the capital they were going to use to build their empire. After a totally brutal journey, they actually make it into Kafiristan. And just like they predicted, their modern weapons immediately give them a massive advantage. But it doesn't just make them strong. It makes them seem like something else entirely. So they come across a battle between two local tribes. And while these guys are fighting with arrows and ancient muskets, Dravat and Carnahan just sit back on a rock and, from 200 yards away, start calmly picking off the enemy. For the tribesmen who'd never seen anything like it, this wasn't warfare. This was impossible. It had to be magic. It was the work of gods. And then something happens that changes the entire game. They discover that the local people have this legend that they're all descended from the lost army of Alexander the Great. And in a 1 in a million coincidence, the local priests use sacred symbols that Dravat and Carnahan, who are both Freemasons, recognize immediately as Masonic symbols. The locals thought they were ancient divine marks from Alexander himself. And because they were Masons, they knew all the secret handshakes and signs that went along with those symbols. So when they show this secret knowledge to the priests, that's it. Game over. They're not just powerful outsiders anymore. In the eyes of the locals, they are the living, breathing descendants of Alexander, the gods who have returned to claim their kingdom. I mean, the plan worked beyond their wildest dreams. They actually did it. They united the tribes, they built an army, they handed out justice, and Daniel Dravat, the broke ex-soldier, is now wearing a crown made of pure hammered gold. But you know what they say about absolute power? It comes with absolute arrogance. Dravat started to believe his own hype.
He wasn't just playing the part of a king. In his head, he was an emperor. And what does every emperor need? A queen, a wife to give him a royal son and start a dynasty. And that single desire was in direct violation of their contract.
Peachy, who always had his feet on the ground, was horrified. He could see the disaster coming a mile away. He begged Dravat, reminded him of their vow, of the promise they made to each other. But Dravat, he was just too lost in this new god-king identity. He wouldn't listen. The very pact that had gotten them a kingdom was about to be broken.
And here's the crazy, catastrophic irony. The very belief that gave them all their power was now about to destroy them. See, to the people of Kafistan, the idea of a god marrying a mortal woman was just unthinkable. They genuinely believed that the touch of a god would literally kill a human. So Dravot's demand wasn't just a bad idea, it was blasphemy. And it planted the first seeds of doubt in everyone's mind.
But Dravat wouldn't back down. He pushed ahead, ignoring the priests, ignoring Peachy. A bride was chosen, a ceremony was planned, but you could just feel the tension in the air. This wasn't a celebration. It felt more like the countdown to an execution. This was the beginning of the end. So they bring this young woman before him, and she is pale with terror. She is absolutely convinced that the second this god-king touches her, she's going to burst into flames. So as Dravat, this self-proclaimed god, leans in to kiss his new bride, her pure survival instinct just takes over. In a moment of just sheer panic, she bites him, hard, on the cheek, and Dravat, shocked and furious, cries out in pain. He throws his hand up to his face, and when he pulls it away, everyone sees it. Just one drop, a single tiny crimson drop of blood rolling down the cheek of a supposed god. And in that one instant, the entire magnificent illusion they had built, it just evaporated. Because everybody knows gods don't bleed. The chief priest screams the words that are on everyone's mind. The spell is shattered. Their divinity was a lie. And the crowd, feeling betrayed, feeling lied to, all that awe and worship turns into murderous rage. Their kingdom didn't just fall, it imploded in a single heartbeat. There was no trial. There was no mercy. Their reign was over, and the punishment for pretending to be gods was going to be just as epic and terrifying as their rise to power had been. For Daniel Dravot, they march him out to a rickety rope bridge over massive gorge. He walks to the middle, still wearing his golden crown, and they just cut the ropes. He plummets into the abyss. For Peachy, they crucify him, nailing him between two pine trees. But then a miracle happens. He doesn't die. After a full day, the locals, awestruck, take him down and just let him go. M's story closes with one of the most haunting images in all of literature. A full year later, this broken, shambling wreck of a man limps back into the narrator's office. It's Peachy. And to prove that his impossible story wasn't just the ravings of a madman, he opens up his bag and places on the table the withered, severed head of Daniel Dravot, still wearing its crude gold crown. So in the end, this isn't just some thrilling adventure tale. It's a chilling warning, isn't it? It's about how intoxicating power can be and how fragile any kingdom is when it's built on a lie. It really makes you ask, how far would you go to get a crown? And more importantly, what part of your own humanity would you lose the moment you started to believe you actually deserved to wear it?